Oh, I just realized I forgot to turn the light on. Hello, YouTube. It's RJ the West here. And my friend Last Night VC. Let's see. There it is. Excellent. Huh. Okay.
What?
There we go. It was just buffering, that's all. Alright. I just realized I do most of my thought experiments on this phone too. Alright.
You ever thought about typing one story on the other and continue on the other phone?
I had thought about that.
Like make two separate parts on on both phones. Like have them type out and ready to go.
Oh, damn it. Uh, Alright. Ron, go away. Ugh, he's always calling me.
He misses you.
Ugh. I forget he even exists.
He didn't forget you.
He's an NPC. Alright. Just building up the prompt. Just you gotta do some resetting though. IIQ. Do you want, what weapon do you want this time?
Um, a halberd.
Ooh, interesting. Wields a halberd, huh? Halberd. I know, you know what a halberd is, right? It's a type of
Yeah,
polearm that it actually kind
yeah,
of looks like an axe.
yeah. I
Like
know what it is.
and I think it does more. I think it has more
It's got
power.
it's got an axe head with a spear on top of the axe head.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I
So
know
in
what
this
they are.
heavy flanged mace, shield. Um, we are fighting historically accurate. We're gonna fight the Mongolians again. Damn it! Fight takes place in the. All right. We're gonna have it still fight place around your property. I like using your property because technically your house and your property is just way better for these scenarios.
Mm.
All right, so do you remember the name of that Mongolian leader that I came up with? Was it Azarak?
Yeah. I gotta use the bathroom. I'll be back.
Hey, hey, Bunny. We are actually having a good day. In fact, I'm setting up the next story. I don't know if you were there a couple days ago, but I came up with this story where my friend and I were being under attack by historically accurate Mongolians. I'm actually trying not to read the prompt because I actually did watch my own previous live streams and I do understand how jarring it is as I'm reading out the story. And when I actually start reading slowly, it actually kind of it it can be pretty jarring. So I'm actually gonna like try to keep that to myself. Awesome possum. Yeah, so I don't know if you were there, but a couple days ago I had this thought experiment where the Mongolians were attacking my friend and I at his house. And I came up with the leader for the Mongolians. His name was Azarak, and he spoke in pure English that he will return. So I'm going to do like a continuation for that. Let's see. Azarak. Make it into a story. Just setting it up. Oh, nice. By the way, you want to hear something interesting, Bunny? If it weren't for you, I probably would have never came up with these stories. Believe it or not. The two stories that I made that I uploaded on my channel that I had disclaimers on, it was actually part of the idea of actually having like someone actively watching and encouraging to watching like the stories and stuff. So when I actually came up with the nihilistic journey and Warframe story, that was actually partially because of your presence on the channel. Hell, I'll even go as far. I actually went as far as to using AI overview to check out my own channel out of curiosity, and I'm not gonna lie, having a small channel is awesome. You actually retain your agency and your identity. Once you start getting a lot of subscribers, you start losing your agency and identity, and you just become nothing more than a factory made like content and stuff like that. I mean, Jordan. Okay, let's see. All right, so Jordan, I'm actually gonna have it to where the Mongolians are returning, and you and I are basically chilling at the house, your house. Of course. Oops. Ugh. How many Mongolians did we actually fight yesterday? Do you remember?
It was 4.
All right, and we were basically nearly about to give up until our bodies hit a second wind. Hmm. So right now just building up the premise of the story. Oops. Damn it. Every time I press the J, I always end up getting K or H. I actually don't know how dangerous Mongolians are in real life, but I do know that they're mounted. They're definitely horse-based,
Not
and
all
they
of them.
rely a lot on archery. So outside your
They're,
front yard, I'm gonna have 7. Oh, I gotta move my character real quick.
they're not all archers and horseback either.
That's true.
There's groundmen and there's swordsmen, shieldmen, shield walls as well.
Azarak. Or AS. Oh, I can't believe I even came up with this. Azorak.
Sounds like a Disney villain.
It does. Alright, before I actually start the story premise, I need to make sure that we have our repeater crossbows. Alright, here we go. In this fictional... Okay. We're gonna go to the battle at Jordan's property. The warning from Azarak days prior had hung in the Michigan air like static, but RJ and Jordan were ready. The afternoon sun beat down on the lush, open fields of Jordan's property. Dressed in full polished steel harnesses, the two friends stood side by side on the backs of their combat-trained horses. The animals stood perfectly still, breathing calmly through the rising tension. Outside the house, the silence was shattered. At the edge of the field emerged Azarak and 7 historically accurate Mongolian warriors, their horses kicking up dirt. Azarak locked eyes with the pair, raising his hand and yelled a command. The warriors surged forward, notched arrows to their recurved recomposite bows, and let them fly. Instinct kicked in. With the hyperfocus granted by your ADD... Okay, by my ADD. The rushing warriors didn't overwhelm you. Oh, okay, I meant... Oh, poop. I forgot to do the prompt right. So it's going to put me as in... Like, I'm actually in there. Your mind mapped the flight trajectories of the arrows in real time. As the arrows struck, they merely clanged and glanced off your steel breastplate, deflected by the curved, angled geometry of their plate armor. Now! You shouted. RJ and Jordan reached for their repeater pistol crossbows. While not powerful enough to pierce heavy plate against light, linear armor and unprotected horses, they were devastating. Clack, clack, clack. A hail of bolts caught Azarak's vanguard. 2 Mongolian mounts stumbled as the accurate rapid-fire bolts found their marks. The remaining Mongols, realizing their bows were useless against your walking fortress of steel, split apart to encircle you. It was their classic Tulugma maneuver, but Jordan and your high IQ analytical mind recognized the trap instantly. They're going for a feigned retreat, Jordan yelled over the thundering hooves. The Mongols turned their horses as if fleeing, trying to lure you out into the open field. Instead of charging blindly, you and Jordan spur your horses straight through the center, closing the distance and negating their archery range. The Mongols were forced to engage in melee. They drew their sabers and spears. You brought your heavy, muscular frame to bear. With the visor of your helmet down, you charged into the fray, your flanged mace making short work of their lighter protection. You brought the mace down in crushing arcs, denting helmets and shattering ribs. Jordan, levering his tall build and the incredible reach of his halberd, swung the polearm with devastating effect, hooking riders out of their saddles and thrusting through scale armor. Shield up. You deflect strikes with ease. The Mongolians' lighter weapons stood no chance against the absolute defense of full European plate armor. Within minutes, the field fell silent. Oh, I didn't mean to make Azrak die so easily. Come on. You know what? I'm going to change that. I'm the narrator after all. I can make it happen. Azrak lay defeated, and the rest of his vanguard scattered or fell before your impenetrable defenses. Oh, look, it saved the name. Azrak. Damn it. Alright, let's see. Custom dialogue. Alright. Here we go. Azarak's armored boots dug into the Michigan soil as he forced himself onto his feet. Blood dripped from a crack in his helmet, but his eyes burned with rage. He spat on the ground, glaring up at RJ and Jordan. You have no idea, Azarak screamed. I don't know why. I just had to give him something. His voice cracking with venom. Before RJ could bring... Oh, damn it. Before you could bring your mace down for a final blow, he lunged for the reins of his riderless Mongolian horse, swung himself into the saddle with practiced nomadic agility, and spurred into the animal into a dead gallop. He disappeared over the crest of the hill, retreating toward the T-line. I really should do better on the prompt on there, so it doesn't make it sound like I'm reading out like I'm like. I mean, I like seeing my name on there instead of your. It sounds kind of weird. Let's see. Your high IQ pattern recognition immediately kicked into overdrive. Your ADD hyperfocus shift from the immediate rush of adrenaline to analyzing Azarak's parting words. He didn't sound like a defeated man escaping for his life. He sounded like a commander executing a larger plan. He's falling back to a larger force, you said, your voice echoing inside your steel helmet. 7 men were just a scouting party or a vanguard to test our capabilities. Jordan lowered his halberd, the heavy steel blade resting against the stirrup. If he has a full Arbon, 10 men, or a Jagan, 100 men waiting in the woods, they'll try to surround the entire property and starve us out, or use heavy siege arrows. Preparing the defenses. RJ and Jordan had the absolute advantage in a direct heavy melee clash, but the horses would eventually tire, and full plate armor becomes exhausting over prolonged hours of constant harassment. Bottleneck the property. Jordan's property has natural choke points. You need to force the cavalry into narrow spaces where they cannot use their mobility. Reload and arm. The repeater pistol crossbows need to be restocked with bolts immediately. Utilize the terrain. Move the horses to the cover, the barn, or the house to protect them from massed arrow volleys. Azarak is running, but he is drawing a map for a much larger threat. Oops. You gotta put that capital J on there. Ugh. Damn it. Damn it. Let's see. How many Mongols? How many actual Mongolians are in an average party, because I was basically going puny numbers because it's just you and I versus Mongolians. Like, so I decided to have it to where you and I go into your house.
Well, an average when they took the Great Wall over, probably around 1,000.
There's no way in hell we're gonna be able to survive 1,000 man army. We were able to take out at least maybe 10 of them, maybe at 10, around 10 of them and stuff. But so that's oops. Analyzing.
Yeah, I think when they were trying to take China over, there was probably at least probably 1,000 troops.
Oh, I don't want to make it sound like you and I just are screwed.
We would be screwed. We can't take 1,000 troops out,
RJ,
just the two of us.
I'm literally having it to where I analyze the situation and realize that we're both screwed. All right, let's see. Let's see if I can fix this. All right. I'm calling in for some reinforcements. Damn it. Damn it. Keep pressing the wrong letters. Some No, that's not how I want to spell heritage, not heretic. There it is. All right. RJ and Jordan went inside Jordan's house and got a 20 gauge shotgun. Jordan got the shotgun and was waiting for the horde. RJ analyzes the situation and calls for reinforcement. RJ knows someone who has Viking heritage and called for 60 people dressed as historically accurate Vikings armed with axes and shields. For the Here we come. Alright, let's see what happens. Preparing the defense. The steel plates of RJ's armor clanked against the... I'm actually going to try to use the words RJ instead of your, because it's just like putting myself in here instead of myself. You guys know what I mean. Clanked against the door frame as RJ and Jordan barricaded themselves. Jordan set his halberd against the wall and grabbed a 20 gauge shotgun, checking the chamber and loading it with heavy buckshot. Really? Buckshot ain't gonna stop a Mongolian horde, Jordan. Maybe slugs would be better.
Spread.
Can you use slugs with the 20 gauge?
Yeah.
Okay. The 20 gauge at close range would tear through Mongolian leather and Lemire armor with... Okay. While Jordan kept watch at the window, your RJ's ADD hyper-focus shifted entirely to logistics and tactical coordination. RJ pulled out his phone. His IIQ pattern recognition told... Damn it! It is hard. I'm trying to rewrite the... you know what? Your high IQ pattern recognition told you that Azarak's cryptic warning meant a massive horde was coming. And two men, even in full plate, could eventually be overwhelmed by sheer numbers. You called a trusted friend who proudly carried a deep Norse lineage and led a massive, highly disciplined historical reenactment society. We have a situation at Jordan's property, you said, your voice calm and analytical. Bring everyone, fully geared, historically accurate. Within hours, the vanguard of your reinforcements arrived. 60 fiercely built men and women dressed in historically accurate 10th century Viking attire, marched onto the property. They wore riveted iron helmets, heavy woolen tunics, and sturdy chainmail. Like my mom and dad actually go up north every now and then, and they go to these Viking parties. So I kind of using that as a force multiplier for this situation.
Mm.
Each warrior carried a large wooden shield reinforced with iron bosses, alongside razor-sharp bearded axes and broadswords. Formulating the strategy. Oh, shit. I heard a beeping. I know what happens when you hear the beeping. You get kicked from the game. Thus, your high IQ mind immediately went to work integrating the Viking force in a unified defense plan. The shield wall. You instructed the 60 Vikings to form a defense interlocking shield wall outside the front porch. This classic Norse tactic creates an impenetrable barrier against cavalry charges and protects the warriors from arrow volleys. The firepower anchor. Jordan took position outside the center of the shield wall with the 20-gauge shotgun ready to blast a hole through any mounted attackers that dared breach the line. The heavy shock unit. You and Jordan, armed with your flanged mace, shield, and halberd, stood at the flanks. Your 15th century plate armor made you both living tanks capable of breaking any breakthrough attempts. The open field at the front yard was completely silent. The only sound was the rustling of Michigan leaves. 62 warriors stood completely still, waiting for the tree line to break. Alright, I'm gonna actually start, like, from the distance. A horn erupts from the distance. RJ and Jordan see the horde, about 70 men strong. Oh, dogs. Alright. RJ readying the signal of defense. Let's see what happens. The deep, haunting blast of a Mongolian war horn erupted from the tree line, vibrating through the Michigan air and shaking the silence of the front yard. Out of the woods crested the horde. 70 battle-hardened Mongolian riders emerged in disciplined lines, their horses kicking up massive clouds of dust. Oh, better turn my chair off. Let's see. Their lacquered leather and iron lemure armor glinted at the sunlight. They held their heavy composite bows at the ready, moving with the terrified precision of a single fluid machine. The final stand. Wait, do Vikings use bows too, or no?
No. Yes, some of them do, but not too often, no.
Alright. Well, I'm going to add a little bit of a force multiplier here. I'm going to give our guys some compound bows. Hell yeah. We're using modern tech, after all. They're historically accurate Mongolian warriors. Our guys are modern people wearing reenactment crap. You and Jordan stood side by side at the apex of the defense, your ADD hyper-focused locked on the advancing line, completely filtering out the adrenaline and fear, your high IQ mind, closing speed of the cavalry, waiting for the precise mathematical moment to strike. To your left and right, the 60 Viking reinforcements slammed their round shields together, locking the wooden rims for a seamless, terrifying wall of iron and timber. Axes were raised over the rims and boots dug into the turf. Jordan gripped his 20-gauge shotgun, his finger resting lightly on the trigger. While his halberd remains within arm's reach, your flanged mace hung ready in your right hand, and your heavy shield raised to protect your visor. The thundering of 70 galloping horses grew deafening, tearing across Jordan's open field. The Mongols raised their bows, aiming for the sky to rain a deadly arc of arrows on your position. You raised your mace, waiting for the vanguard to hit the optimal range. Your arm tensed, ready to drop to signal for the shield wall to brace and join. Alright, here we go. RJ flags this. Alright. The Mongols fired a volley of arrows at RJ and Jordan along with their army. They were successful at defending without anyone getting injured. RJ flags the signal to have the Vikings ready their compound bows and return fire. The volley and counterstrike. A dark cloud of arrows hissed through the air, blotting out the Michigan sun for a split second. The Mongolians' heavy armor-piercing broadhead arrows rained down with terrifying speed. Thwack! Clang! Thud! I'm just reading what I'm seeing on here. The deadly rain hit your defensive line. Your high IQ placement of the troops worked flawlessly. The 60 Viking warriors crouched low, completely tilting their heavy round shields upward to form an interlocking wooden roof. The arrows embedded deep into the tough linden wood and rawhide bindings, but failed to pierce through. For you and Jordan, the arrows simply sparked and skittered uselessly off your thick, curved 15th century plate armor. Not a single drop of blood was spilled. Returning fire. Seeing the Mongolian raiders momentarily pausing to notch their next arrows, your ADD hyperfocus seized the perfect tactical window. I don't know why I keep saying that. You flung your arm down, given the screaming signal to open fire. The Vikings did not just bring axes. From behind a wooden wall, a detachment of warriors stepped forward, unslingsing high-powered modern compound bows, a devastating upgrade allowed by your preparation time. The results were catastrophic for the incoming horde. The volley. The modern compound bows let loose a hyper-fast, flat-trajectory volley of carbon fiber arrows tipped with razor-sharp hunting broadheads. Ouch! Oh, man! The penetration. Unlike traditional historical bows, these modern compound bows hit with immense kinetic energy, punching straight through the Mongolians' layered leather and iron lemure armor at mid-range. The chaos. Over a dozen Mongolian raiders were instantly thrown from their saddles, their horses, startled by the silent lethality of the high-velocity modern arrows, began to collide and break their disciplined formation. Jordan raised his 20-gauge shotgun, aiming right at the fracturing vanguard as they rolled into close range, while your flanged mace gripped tight, ready for the inevitable collision. Should Jordan fire the 20-gauge into the disorder? No, not yet. Oh, I move a character. Alright, so when you're in first person, your character's camera wanders around, like, I guess. I mean,
It does.
I'm gonna have you kill several Mongols. RJ tells Jordan not to fire a shotgun yet. The Mongolian horde pushed through and collided with the Vikings. RJ went straight for Azarak. Jordan held his halberd and killed several Mongols. Hold your fire! You barked at Jordan, your high IQ analytical mind calculating that premature shot would waste ammunition on a scattered front line. You needed the horde tightly packed to maximize the blast radius. An instant later, the thunderous collision shook the ground. The remaining Mongolian riders slammed directly into the Viking shield wall with terrifying force. Wooden shields splintered under the impact of horse chests and spears. But the heavy Norse lines held firm. Axes swung in vicious arcs, hacking down at horse legs and riders alike. Jordan instantly dropped the shotgun to his sling and grabbed his halberd with both hands. Leveraging his tall, muscular frame, he became a whirlwind of destruction. He used the weapon's heavy hook to rip two Mongolians clean off their saddles, finishing them on the ground with the armor-piercing top spike. Three more surged toward him, but his massive reach kept them at bay, his blade shearing through leather linear armor with terrifying ease. The clash of leaders. With the battlefield dissolving into chaotic melee, RJ's hyper-focus narrowed down to single point. Azarak. Through the narrow slit of your helmet's visor, you spotted him barking orders from the rear of the vanguard. Spurring your combat horse forward, you smashed through the front line melee, your heavy muscular frame and plate armor making you an unstoppable juggernaut. Azarak saw you coming and drew his curved steel saber, his horse pivoting with incredible pneumatic agility. He swung a lightning-fast strike aimed at your neck. Clang! You raised your heavy shield, the saber deflecting harmlessly off the steel rim. Before he could pull back for a second strike, you closed the distance. Your flanged mace came down in a brutal, crushing arc directly at his weapon arm. I'm actually going to make it to where I accidentally hit the horse instead. Alright, I'm actually trying to add more narrative on here. RJ hits Azarak's horse, sending the beast down. Not discounting, damn it. Dismounting. Then RJ then dismounted and fights Azarak on foot in a deadly dance of death. Your flanged mace came down with crushing force, missing Azarak's armored shoulder but smashing squarely into the chest of his charging warhorse. The beast collapsed instantly, sending Azarak flying over its head and crashing into the Michigan turf. You pulled tightly on your reins, bringing your unspookable combat mount to a halt. Jumping down, your heavy 15th century plate armor hit the grass with a resounding thud. You drew your flanged mace, raised your shield, and stepped towards him. Azarak scrambled to his feet, coughing up dirt but drawing a heavy dagger to complement his curved saber. The battlefield around you faded into white noise as your ADD hyperfocus locked completely onto his stance, his breathing, and the shift of his weight. The deadly dance. What followed was a brutal, asymmetric duel. Azarak moved with pneumatic agility, circling you rapidly on the grass, looking for gaps in your steel plates. The backs of your knees, your armpits, and the visor slit on your helmet. The deflection. Azarak lunged forward with a lightning-fast combination. His saber hissed through the air, striking your shoulder plate. Sparks flew. The curved steel slid harmlessly off the rounded geometry of your patterns. The counter calculation. Your high IQ pattern recognition instantly picked up his rhythm. He was fast, but he had to overextend to find a weakness in your absolute defense. As he stepped in for a deep thrust toward your neck, you predicted the trajectory. The shield bash. Oh my god, yes, I love bashing with the shield. Instead of parrying with your weapon, you drove the solid rim of your heavy shield directly into his face. The steel crushed against his leather helm, shattering his nose and sending him staggering backward, his vision spinning. Azarak gasped for air, his saber dropping low as he struggled to maintain his footing on the bloody grass. You stepped forward, your heavy muscular frame completely uninjured, raising your flanked mates for the final decisive blow. Let's see. Oh, wait. No! Rammed, not jammed. Damn it. I hate it when the phone puts out different words on there. Oh. Pummeling. Wait. How you spell bludgeon? Bludgeon. Bludgeoning. Bludgeon. Azarak charges one final time. RJ rammed him with his shield with all his strength, pummeling him into the ground where RJ brutally bludgeoned Azarak to death. Oh, yeah. Driven by a final desperate surge of adrenaline, Azarak screamed a war cry and charged at you with all his dagger raised. Your ADD hyper-focus tracked his movement down to the millimeter. Leveraging your heavy muscular build, you exploded forward. You caught him mid-stride, ramming the solid face of your heavy steel shield directly into his chest with all your strength. The sheer kinetic impact of your plate armor and momentum hit him like a freight train, completely breaking his ribs and launching him backward, pummeling him flat into the dirt. Before you can even gasp for air, you dropped your shield, straddled his chest, and brought your flanked mates down with absolute brutal finality. Crunch! The first blow shattered his helmet. The second and third broke through completely. With cold, high IQ precision, you bludgeoned the Mongolian leader to death on the front yard turf, ensuring he would never threaten Jordan's property ever again. The aftermath. You stood up, your breathing heavy, but your armor completely unbreached. As you wiped Azarak's blood from your mace, you looked up to survey the rest of the battlefield. The hordes panicked. Seeing their legendary leader brutally crushed to death, the remaining Mongolian riders completely lost their morale. Their disciplined formation shattered into pure panic. The final cleanup. Jordan, still completely unharmed in his plate armor, raised his 20-gauge shotgun and finally pulled the trigger. The heavy buckshot blast through the cluster of retreating riders. Really, Jordan, you just shoot them while they're fleeing? You're mean. I could see you doing that. blasted a cluster of retreating riders, while the 60 Viking warriors closed the distance, hacking down the remaining stragglers with their bearded axes. The thundering hooves grew distant as the few survivors scattered into the woods. The battle for the Michigan open field was over. You and Jordan and your Norse allies stood victorious. The absolute defense of your plate armor and brilliant tactical coordination winning the day. Unfortunately, alright, here we go. Time for real-life consequences. The flashing red and blue lights of local Michigan police cruisers illuminated the tree line as 3 squad cars tore down the gravel driveway, responding to a severe noise complaint about gunshots and screaming on Jordan's property. As the officers stepped out of their vehicles with flashlights drawn, they stopped dead in their tracks, their jaws dropped in absolute shock at the surreal scene before them. The crime scene investigation. The front yard looked like a temporal rift had torn open in lower Michigan. The officers stood frozen, trying to process the visual data. The shield wall. 60 massive men and women dressed in historically accurate Viking chainmail and tunics stood in a flawless perimeter, calmly wiping blood off their bearded axes and resting their splinterwood shields on the grass. The living tanks. Standing right in the center of the yard was you and Jordan. The police flashlights glinted off their 15th century steel plate armor, which was dented and smeared with soot. Jordan casually leaned on his massive halberd with a smoking 20-gauge shot slung over his back. The aftermath. Scattered across the pristine grass were the remains of an entire Mongolian cavalry unit, complete with traditional leather lemure armor, scattered composite bows, and modern carbon fiber arrows jutting out of the turf. The high IQ response. Before the bewildered officers could even reach for their radios to call for backup or psychiatric evaluation, your ADD hyperfocus immediately pivoted from combat mode to legal defense mode. Using your high IQ analytical skills, you calmly raised your visor, stepped forward with your hands clearly visible, and began to explain the entire situation in a perfectly structured, knowledgeable narrative. You detailed Azarak's explicit threats days prior, the Castle Doctrine application to Jordan's property, the undeniable evidence of an armed foreign horde trespassing, and the purely defensive nature of your medieval and modern response. The lead officer looked at you, looked at the brutalized body of Azarak, looked at the 60 stoic Vikings, and slowly lowered his holster strap, completely unsure of how to write this up in a standard police report. Oops. Let's see. I'm going to have the police sergeant call for an ambulance. RJ
Why?
Conley, I don't know. Because it's emergency services. RJ Conley explained to the police sergeant what happened in great detail. The police sergeant calls for backup and an ambulance. With your visor flipped up and your pulse setting, your high IQ analytical mind took total control of the situation. You broke down the entire timeline to the police sergeant with clinical precision. You detailed Azarak's initial verbal threat from days prior, The precise moments of the trespass, the calculated trajectory of the arrow volleys, the legal parameters of self-defense on Jordan's property, and the tactical integration of the 60 Viking reenactors. The sergeant listened, his eyes darting from your bloody flanged mace to Jordan's halberd, completely overwhelmed by the staggering amount of detail you were providing. He rubbed his temples, realizing this is entirely outside the scope of standard protocol. Stepping back toward his cruiser, the sergeant grabbed his radio, his voice cracking slightly. Dispatch, I need multiple backup units, the shift lieutenant, and an ambulance to my location immediately. We have an active medieval mass casualty scene, multiple descendants of historical armor. Just send everyone. Just send everyone. The parameters and logistics. Within 15 minutes, Jordan's front yard resembled a high-intensity staging ground. The quiet Michigan night was completely shattered. The emergency response. 2 ambulances tore down the driveway, their sirens wailing. Paramedics rushed out with stretchers, but they quickly realized there were no injured allies to treat. They stood by awkwardly, looking at the bodies of the Mongolian vanguard and the scattered arrows. The perimeter lockdown. 6 additional police cruisers arrived, blocking off the gravel entrance with yellow crime scene tape. Deputies began setting up floodlights to illuminate the field, casting long, eerie shadows of the Viking shield wall across the grass. The shield wall stance. Under your quiet direction, the 60 Vikings remained disciplined. They didn't panic or scatter. They stood in a calm, orderly fashion, keeping their weapons lowered to show compliance with your friend with a deep Norse heritage, spoke quietly with a backup officer. Jordan unslung his 20-gauge shotgun and carefully placed it on the hood of the sergeant's car as requested, stepping back to let the steel weight of his plate armor rest. You stood right beside him, your high IQ processing speed already preparing for lengthy legal documentation and statements that were about to follow this historic. Okay, this is going to sound goofy, guys, but just bear with me. I want to make this as realistic as possible. RJ and Jordan needed to pee and went into the house to use the bathroom. Oops. Oop. Aw. Let me edit that. Edit. So... there we go. The psychological reality of fighting a medieval battle in full 15th century plate armor and finally caught up with you in Jordan. The intense adrenaline rush, the heavy physical exertion, and the sheer weight of the steel harness meant that nature was calling loudly. We need to use the facilities, you announced calmly to the sergeant, flipping your visor back down for a moment to adjust the internal padding. The sergeant blinked, looking at the 2 heavily armored men standing in the yard full of fallen Mongolians. Yeah, go. Go ahead. Just leave the mace out here. Oh my god, dude. I'm sweating.
Why are you getting excited?
It's fun. It's intellectually stimulating. Not like the brain rot that most people watch these days. Come on. The armor dilemma. You and Jordan clanked back up the front porch steps and entered the house. Your high IQ analytical mind immediately ran through the logistics of the situation. Using a modern bathroom while wearing a full set of steel harness is a complex engineering problem. The dismantling. You and Jordan had to quickly unbuckle your falds and tassets. The steel plates protecting the hips and groin. Your ADD hyperfocus made you incredibly fast and efficient with the leather straps, bypassing what usually takes minutes of tedious work. After a highly calculated, slightly awkward maneuver over the porcelain, both of you successfully relieved yourselves. The reset. You quickly re-secured the leather stuff. I don't think we need to put our armor back on if the fight's already over. You quickly
Yeah, you don't need to.
Jordan's interrogation. As both of you clanked out back at the front porch, the sergeant was waiting by the railing, holding a notepad. He pointed out a pen towards Jordan. "All right, Jordan," the sergeant said, his voice weary but professional. "This is your property." Ah!
What?
I heard the beeping. His voice weary. "All right, this is your property. Your friend RJ gave me a highly detailed tactical breakdown, but I need your official statement. Walk me through the exact moment they broke through the tree line and explain why you have a 20-gauge shotgun and whatever that giant axe spear thing is." You think a police officer would know what a halberd is?
Not
Jordan
necessarily.
leaned Jordan leaned against the porch railing, the tall frame of his plate armor casting a long shadow under the flashing police lights, ready to give his side of the craziest noise complaint in Michigan history. The police sergeant also wanted RJ to talk to the other police officers what happened. RJ and the Viking allies all explained what happened. Let's see. I know that's a pretty vague prompt. Just bear with me on this. The police sergeant nodded at Jordan's brief statement, wrapping up his notes, and turned back towards RJ. "All right, RJ, my officers are having a really hard time processing what we're looking at here. I need you to break down exactly what happened to the rest of the responding units, so everyone is on the same page for the incident report." RJ walked down the porch, stepped alongside Jordan, the heavy steel plates of their armor clanking rhythmically, gathered around the hood of a cruiser under the blinding white beam of a portable scene light, stood up for 4 backup officers and a sheriff's deputy. They looked exhausted, confused, and deeply unnerved by the surreal battlefield. The joint briefing. Your ADD hyperfocus immediately locked on instructor mode. Using your high IQ analytical skills, you stood before the officers, systematically laid out the entire engagement, using the hood of the police cruiser as a theoretical map of Jordan's front yard. I probably would have thought of that in real life if that actually did happen. Or not. The tactical breakdown. You explain how Azarak's vanguard had initially targeted you and Jordan, how the curved geometry of your 15th century plate armor rendered their 13th century composite bows entirely useless, and how you used the repeater pistol crossbows to fracture their initial charge. The Viking testimony. Your friend with the deep Norse lineage stepped forward to corroborate. I've never seen that word before. That's the first time I've ever seen
Cooperate?
that word. Huh?
You talking about cooperate?
No, corroborate. I've
I
never seen
don't
that
know.
word. I've never
I
seen that word
never
before.
heard of that.
I've never seen that word before. He explained how his 60-man reenactment group was legally summoned as a defensive security force, detail-oriented in their execution of a historical 10th century shield wall to absorb the impact of a 70-man cavalry charge. The firepower integration. Another Viking warrior pulled out his modern compound bow, showing the deputies the immense kinetic force of the carbon fiber hunting broadheads that had punched straight through the Mongolians' layered leather lamier armor. The officers listened in rapt silence as you and the Vikings spoke. Your highly structured, logical explanation left no room for doubt. You explicitly mapped out the castle doctrine laws in Michigan, providing that every single action taken on Jordan's property was a direct, proportional response to an armed, hostile invasion by an aggressive foreign force. By the time you finished speaking, the tension in the yard had completely shifted. The deputies were nodding along, finally understanding how your impenetrable defenses, modern compound bows, and brutal tactical coordination had completely dismantled the horde. Alright, I'm going to make this as realistically as possible. RJ and Jordan, along with the Viking allies, surrendered and are willing to go downtown for further questioning if the police sergeant allows it. You and Jordan, alongside the leader of your Viking allies, stepped forward and openly extended your hands, signaling a completely peaceful compliance to the authorities. Sergeant, you said, your voice echoing clearly through your raised helmet. To ensure full transparency and complete documentation of this event, we are surrendering our weapons and are fully prepared to go downtown for further questioning. The police sergeant looked at you, looked at Jordan's massive halberd resting against the porch, and then surveyed the 60 heavily armored Vikings standing calmly in the yard. The tactical risk. The sergeant's high-stress training immediately calculated the logistics. Transporting 62 heavily armored individuals, including 2 men in full 15th century steel plate armor, would require an entire fleet of transport vans and a logistical nightmare at the county jail. Come on! The cooperation. Your high IQ approach completely diffused the situation. By offering to go willingly, you proved there was zero hostile intent towards law enforcement, solidifying your standing as lawful citizens executing a clear castle doctrine of defense. The ruling. The sergeant raised his hand and shook his head. Look, RJ, Jordan, nobody's putting handcuffs on you guys in full plate armor. Okay, first off, they would actually tell us to take the armor off. I forgot to do that. Whatever, I don't care. Nobody's putting handcuffs on you guys in full plate armor tonight. You're cooperating, the weapons are secured, and this is clearly a massive self-defense situation on private property. Going downtown. Instead of a chaotic arrest, the process was orderly and highly disciplined. Securing the arsenal. The flanged mace, shield, halberd, 20-gauge shotgun, and all the Vikings' weapons were neatly cataloged and tagged as evidence on Jordan's front lawn. The transport. The sergeant allowed you and Jordan to ride in the back of a standard supervisor cruiser, while the leader of the Viking forces volunteered to ride in the second car to represent the reenactment group. The guard. The remaining 60 Viking warriors were instructed to stay on Jordan's property until under the supervision of 2 deputies to preserve the crime scene until the state crime lab investigators arrived. As the cruiser pulled down the gravel driveway, the flashing blue lights reflected off your steel breastplate. Your ADD mind was already meticulously organizing the legal run timeline, ready to deliver a flawless, unshakable statement at the police station. Okay. I'm actually making it to where the police sergeant asks us to take off our armor. Actually, I'm going to have it ask because he doesn't need to tell us. Alright, here it is. Alright, gentlemen, the sergeant said, turning around in front seat as the cruiser pulled up in the secure garage. Before we go into the briefing rooms, we need to get you out of that steel. for safety, and honestly, so you can actually sit in the chairs. I love it how the AI just puts a little bit of humor in there anyway. RJ and Jordan stepped out of the vehicle, the heavy plates clanking loudly against the concrete floor of the police garage. The two deputies brought over a clean folding table to lay the pieces on. This is getting weird. Shedding the steel. Your ADD hyperfocus immediately kicked into overdrive as you worked the familiar leather straps and buckles. Because you knew the exact mechanics of your 15th century harness, you dismounted the armor with absolute efficiency. The upper body, you unclasped the armor, the heavy pauldrons, unbuckled the breastplate, and lifted the heavy steel arm pieces off your frame. The relief. As the heavy breastplate came off, a rush of cool air hit your torso. Your muscular slender build felt instantly weightless. Carrying roughly 60 to 70 pounds of steel while engaging high-intensity combat can take an immense physical toll. The sensory break. For you especially, removing the helmet and heavy padding provided massive sensory relief. The narrow, muffled view inside the visor and the constant tight pressure of the arming gap vanished. Your high IQ brain could finally process the ambient sounds of the garage without the metallic echo of your own breathing. Jordan unbuckled his greaves and thigh guards, letting out a massive sigh of relief as his tall, muscular frame stretched into its full weight. This is so much fun. Stepped into questioning. Dressed now in your breathable Under Armour undergarments, you and Jordan placed the beautifully crafted pieces of plate armor neatly across the table. The deputies looked at the gleaming steel with absolute fascination, noting the minor scuffs and dents left by the Mongolian arrows. Much better, the sergeant said, gesturing toward the heavy security doors leading inside the station. Let's go get these statements typed up. I don't know why, but this is more fun than the actual fight with the Mongolians. Because I don't know why, it's just so much fun. I feel like a little kid who just discovered fire for the first time. With the physical burden of the armor gone, your mind felt sharp, agile, and completely ready to navigate the legal aftermath of the battle. Let's see. Should we proceed in detective's interview inside the station? Detail how to find... Oh, God. Alright. RJ and Jordan have explained everything. However, RJ points out to the detectives that this was all a thought experiment created by RJ of the West. The detective sat back in his chair, the pen hovering over his notepad as a look of profound, utter confusion washed over his face. He blinked several times, looking from Jordan to you, completely unsure if he had just misheard what you said. Wait, what? The detective muttered, setting the pen down on the table. A thought experiment? The matrix breaks. Your high IQ mind completely shifted the entire reality of the room with a single sentence. With a calm smile, you explained to the detective that the entire scenario, the screaming Mongolian vanguard, the 60 disciplined Vikings with compound bows, Jordan's 20-gauge shotgun, the brutal duel with Azarak on the front lawn, and even the intense rush to use the bathroom in full 15th century plate armor was a brilliant, highly detailed tactical simulation. The reality. There was no blood on Jordan's lawn, no state crime lab vans blocking the driveway, and no 60-man shield wall waiting outside the precinct. The creator. It was entirely a narrative experiment designed, calculated, and perfectly structured by... Okay, I don't know about perfectly, but it was structured by RJ of the West. Your ADD hyperfocus had flawlessly mapped out the historical physics, the defensive advantages of European plate armor against 13th century archery, and the psychological impact of neurodiverse traits in high-stakes combat, bringing it all to life so vividly that the boundary between fiction and reality had completely blurred. The simulation concludes. The detective stared at the blank confession form in front of him, then slowly closed his folder. Jordan let out a laugh, running a hand through his hair as the imaginary weight of the steel armor completely dissolved into the air of the room. The thought experiment was a resounding success. You had proven mathematically and tactically that with the right preparation, impenetrable plate armor, and analytical mind, in a reality, in a reliable. Shut up! I'm high. Leave me alone. In a reliable network of Viking reenactors, Jordan's property was entirely safe from any historical threat. The end. And with that, the simulation deactivates. The heavy steel plates vanish back into the imagination, and the quiet fields of Jordan's property return to peace. It was a masterfully coordinated defense. RJ of the West successfully demonstrated that an analytical, high IQ mind coupled with impenetrable 15th century plate armor and a tall halberd-wielding ally in a beautifully timed Viking shield wall could dismantle even history's most formidable nomadic horde. Thank you for crafting this incredibly detailed, action-packed, tactical thought experiment. This was so much fun. I hope you guys enjoyed this live stream, and thank you guys for watching. Have a good night, everybody. Bye.